Go ahead, Sarah.
Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellen's community program tonight, The State of the Village. We are really pleased to have with us tonight Glen Ellen Village President Mark Senek and also the Glen Ellen Village Manager Mark Franz to review the accomplishments of the village in 2021 and what will be up and coming in 2022. The purposes of the League of Women Voters are to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. The League works to increase understanding of public policy issues and influences public policy through advocacy and education. The League of Women Voters is totally nonpartisan and does not support or oppose any political party or any political candidate. Michelle?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. There's been a lot of activity in Glen Ellen, and it's going to be really great to hear from Mark and Mark, President Mark Senek and Village Manager Mark Franz. After the presentation, we're going to be asking your questions, and you can send them to us anytime, either during the presentation or after the presentation. If you look at the bottom, there's a Q&A. Click on that button and you'll see a screen so that you can access a window where you can type in your question. And from there, the Vice President of Communications, Karen Daly, will present your questions to President Senek and Village Manager Franz. And even though we will try, we may not be able to get to all of your questions. Any of those questions we don't get to, we will send those on to President Senek and Village Manager Franz for a response, and then we'll post them on our website or social media so that you can get the full breast of all of the information that they have to share tonight. I'm going to pull up or share a screen right now, and so before we begin, I wanted to bring to your attention Glen Ellen's new congressional maps. They've been redrawn as of January 22nd. And Glen Ellen is now represented by 3 different congressional districts. There's other voting districts as well that are affected for Glen Ellen. And is an example, the state legislature. You're invited to go see the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellen website to see these maps and to find out where your voting districts are or where your districts have changed. And we encourage you to pass along this information to friends and family in Glen Ellen. And so I am now going to turn this over to Jody, our VP of Programs. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Sarah. If you hear a dog barking, one of the beautiful things about Zoom is you have home sounds, and every time my husband drives away, my dog goes crazy, and he's at the tail end of crazy. So if you hear a dog for a while, it'll end soon. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming. This tends to be the State of the Village, the most populous attended program that we do. So we're glad that you're all here. We appreciate that you came on Zoom. We wish we were in person, but hopefully sometime in the future. It's my privilege to introduce our guests tonight and give you just a little bit of background on them. Mark Franz is currently the village manager for the Village of Glen Ellen. He has 25 years of municipal experience and was the 2015 Illinois City Manager Association president. Previously, he was the village manager in Homewood for 8 years and has worked for the city of Evanston and the village of Northbrook earlier in his career. He's currently the chair of the Illinois City Managers Association Committee on Professional Conduct. And also we have President Mark Senek. Mark was elected as village president in 2021. Prior to his role as president, he was a 2-term village trustee, serving from 2015 to 2019, and then again from 2019 until his election as president. Additionally, he previously served as a member of the village Architectural Review Commission from 2013 to 2015. President Senek has been a resident of Glen Ellen for over 26 years with his wife and his 3 children. And he has stated his favorite part of Glen Ellen is the residents. Their passion and commitment to the village are what make Glen Ellen a great place to live. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to our guests, Mark and Mark.
You're still on mute.
Yeah, Mark, I think you need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Let me try that again. Sorry, to give us 1 second here. We're having a little technical difficulties. Go ahead.
Do not assume that because we cannot technically manage this, that your village is not being run in the most optimal way possible. So, but I did want to begin by just simply saying thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum. It's a great opportunity for us to really listen to what the residents have to say. And it's an opportunity for us to tell you what's going on in the village of Glen Ellen. So it's nice that we have this chance. We look forward to this every year. This is a little bit, this is my first time doing this. So I find it a little interesting that you want to hear from the state of the village from us, when from my perspective, I should be asking you what the state of the village is, because you know better than I what type of village, how's it going. And so one day I want to hear some questions. I want to hear your thoughts on how we're doing, what we can do better, and any suggestions you had on how we can improve the area. But we'll give you a little bit of background now about the village of Glen Ellen. As you can see up here, one of the things that I want to try to stress in this discussion is that we have plenty of volunteer opportunities. 96 volunteers currently serving on the 12 village boards and commissions, but we are always open to anyone who is interested in volunteering to be a member of the commission. One of the things that we have tried to do is diversify the commissions in just about every way that we can. Geographically, I'd like to encourage anyone who is south of Roosevelt Road to participate, to send in your application. We're trying to get more involvement from the people who live south of Roosevelt Road. And so if you are out there and you see a commission that you're interested in, please send in your application and we'll find a place for you. Couple things to point out here is, first of all, we have a new commission. Actually, I think we will have 2 new commissions soon. The first one is our Community Relations Commission, and that's 9 members. The chairperson of the commission is Sonia Irwin, and the Community Relations Commission was formed primarily to advise the board on issues of diversity, equality, and inclusiveness. And they are tasked with being a point of contact for residents in the village who have any comments or concerns on those issues. They can come to the Community Relations Commission, they can express themselves, and the Community Relations Commission will then advise the board in areas where we can improve in that regard and where we may be able to take some initiatives to increase the diversity, equality, inclusiveness of the commission. The other one, the Architectural Appearance Commission. At the workshop on Monday night, I think we had a consensus amongst the board members that we will reinstitute what used to be called architectural review. Now will be architectural appearance. And in brief, the Architectural Appearance Commission was part of the development process to ensure that the charm, character, integrity of the architectural aspects of the village are carried forward into new development. So if you have some, we're going to be accepting applications for architectural appearance. If you have some interest, please put your application in. Any further comment?
No.
What you see up here now is just a little snapshot of the village of Glen Ellen. It tells us what our population is, and by way of some illustration, our population increased by 5% from the 2010 census. And as you may know, the population in Illinois went down. So we are, I think, on the positive trend of that. You can see we've put up some of the socioeconomic demographic data, and to give you some sense of who we are. And the 2 that I want to really kind of draw your attention to are our median household income. We'll talk about that later as part of the development process. But also 4% of our residents have disabilities. And again, that is going to be discussed a little bit more in the development process. And 5.8% of our residents, and I have to tell you, this statistic surprised me a little bit, but 5.8% of our residents live in poverty. So despite the affluence of our community, there are still members of our community who do not share in that wealth. And one of our goals is to try to raise that up, reduce that number, so that we are all being able to benefit from living in what is really a great village. We are going into the strategic planning process, and frankly, we are always in some regards in the strategic planning process. But as you see, the 5 areas for our strategic plan: financial sustainability, development, effective governance, workforce and operations, and infrastructure. When I say we're always doing this, we have quarterly reports where we focus on each of these areas, and we set goals, and we hold our village staff accountable for achieving those goals. And our village staff provides us with guidance and direction on how we can accomplish those goals. So it's very much a partnership between the board and the village staff on achieving each of these 5 goals. Financial sustainability. I think everybody is interested, at least, in what is the financial condition of the village. And the short answer to that question is very strong. One of the things that we have been fortunate is throughout the pandemic, we have come through to this point, and I don't think we're quite out of it yet, but at least to this point, we have done a very good job in managing the financial strength, or maintaining the financial strength of the village. And that is very simply a product of Mark Franz and his team. Without them, we could not have achieved the financial success, sustainability that we have. So much of our success is because we do have a very good village staff. And you can see some of the points up here that highlight our financial strength. The ones that, if you want to take away from this, the ones that are important for me are AAA bond rating. Our credit is as good as it can be. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about the village, because that AAA bond rating is obviously from a private bond company, a private financial institution that rates the village's credit worthiness, and we are at the top of that heap. The other thing to keep in mind is that each one of our funds is above the reserve level, meaning that we have money in the bank to deal with any emergencies that come. And one of the reasons why we were able to withstand, and we still are going, maintaining the financial strength of the village in the midst of the COVID pandemic, is because we did have such strong reserves in the bank. And by a little bit of background, we have village policies that require in each of our funds that we have a certain amount of money set aside in case of emergency. And all of our funds are above those levels. And in some instances, particularly in the general fund, we are well above that level. So we have the financial reserves in place to weather, be it a pandemic or any other type of occurrence in which we may need to have revenue. The one last one is, just so you understand, we have received the Certificate of Achievement from the Government Finance Officers Association for our budgeting. And our outside auditor has found no exceptions with the budget report. And we've received this award for 33 consecutive years, 25 of which Mr. Franz has been our village manager. So that will tell you really what a good job he has done throughout this process. And we're fortunate that we have such a strong financial team in place. I think everybody wants to know how much money we have received and what are we going to do with it. So the COVID budget impact, as everyone knows, we received a certain amount of money from the federal government through the county for COVID relief. So the village received $1.5 million in CARES Act funding to mitigate the financial impact of COVID-19. And I think that's primarily for businesses. Is that true?
Yeah, a lot of that was spent on ways to assist businesses and survive with during the heart of the pandemic. I'd like to say that those dollars were from the county, and then the 3.8 million in ARPA dollars. We've received half of those funds to date. We'll receive the other half later this year. and those funds are a little more open-ended. There's a new Treasury guideline that will allow us to use those funds with less restrictions. So we'll cover a couple of those topics as we go, but it certainly is going to help us weather this storm.
So one thing to keep in mind about the 3.8 million in ARPA money is that's over 2 years.
2 years.
And interestingly, that is directed to the village. But there are 2 of our government partners who aren't part of that program. That is our park district and our library. And so we have been discussing with the board about ways that we can share that money with the park district and with the library, because they likewise have been impacted by the COVID experience. And from our standpoint, we think we have the opportunity to provide some assistance to them. And we think that that is a good idea to help them along. So those discussions are ongoing, and we'll continue to have them with each of those partners in the community, and with the hope and expectation that we can spread it around a little bit. My favorite slide. Manager Franz put this into the presentation just for me. If I had my way, I would have t-shirts made with this on it, but I think there's some trade copyright issues there. The point of this is just to give you some sense of where your money goes. And as you can see, rightfully, a lot of it goes to our schools. And that's why we have great schools, is because we fund them. But our village is really a pretty small slice of your property tax pie. And our library is the same way. So this is just to give you some illustration that when it comes to trying to be fiscally responsible, we take that very seriously. We do a very good job, I think, of trying to keep your taxes low, while at the same time providing you with the services that I think you expect. And the amount that you devote to the village for that purpose is really pretty modest in my mind in return for the services that are provided.
And thanks, President Sanek. I'm going to cover a little bit of a development update for everyone. We, of course, most of you are aware that we have completed one of the projects that have been ongoing for a few years, the Aver project on Duane Street across from the library. This was completed in early 2021 and fully occupied rather quickly by the fall of 2021. They are now going to add a little open outdoor space to the south of the project on Prospect. So that's been approved by the board and will happen sometime this year.
So just one point on this is that when this project came to the board, we asked the developer, how long do you think it will take for you to be fully occupied? And they told us 18 months. They thought we'll be fully occupied, lease it all in 18 months. They were fully occupied in less than a year. And so, you know, that tells us a lot about whether we have a need for further development in the downtown to provide really some alternative housing than what's there.
The Apex project, everyone's aware of this, $40 million investment on Main Street. The construction commenced in September of 2020. It's going to have about 106 luxury apartment units, about 8,800 square feet of commercial space. They're hoping to wrap up sometime this summer. And remember, the first floor parking, it's partially open now, a little hard to get to, but partially open now, and it's expected to be open fully this summer as well. So excited to see that project finally wrap up.
So just a couple of comments on Apex. One is, it's no secret this was not my favorite project. Okay, I think everybody knows that. But I am committed to making sure that this development is as good as it can be for our village. And that primarily includes assisting the developer with leasing the first floor retail space and making sure this construction progresses to a conclusion. So I think in the end, we'll make sure that this development is as good as it can be.
Thank you. The other project that is likely to start this spring is the Glenwood Station project at the former McChesney site. 86 apartment units, about 1,500 square feet of new commercial space and parking on the first floor. The Plan Commission approved this unanimously in 2020. It's about a $30 million project. So we're looking to see that get demolished, the building get demolished in spring of 2022, and they're hoping to have it completed by December of 2023.
So some people have asked me, for instance, why you supported Glenwood Station at 5 stories, but not Apex. And the answer for me is this is a development that fits the location where it's at. If you look at the variation in the height between the location of Apex and the location of Glenwood Station, that variance is about 28 feet. So the land decreases about 28 feet by the time you get to here. And this development for me fits nicely in its location. So I look forward to beginning this development and completing it hopefully in the most timely way possible.
The next project we want to highlight was the hotel property on our hotels on Roosevelt Road. The village board showed a lot of foresight in trying to spur development here because it was not happening on its own. And we purchased the property, just closed on the property last week, in fact, for $2.85 million. We've hired a consultant to begin some visioning sessions with the board and community sometime next month. And all concepts are on the table. Certainly commercial, retail, multifamily, affordable, attainable housing, or mixed use. And we're excited to get that process started and involve as many stakeholders as possible.
So this is a little bit different than what's gone on in the past in the village. It's a bit of a new model of development as we've looked at it. And by that, I mean, rather than waiting for developers to come and purchase the property and then tell us what they see as the vision for their newly acquired property, we have now gone out and acquired the property. And we are going to try to sort of create what our expectations were for development of the property. And the hope is that by doing that, and we'll do that after we spend some time listening to what the community wants. But once we do that, we think that this is a better model, at least I think it's a better model for development in the village because it gives the village more control over the style of the development, the type of the development. And while this is a large investment for the village to make, we're reasonably optimistic that we'll get an appropriate rate of return on this at the time this property is transferred.
And next, we want to just cover a little bit more generically on how people can stay informed on projects. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and show our website. So there's a number of ways that we can try to allow our residents and businesses to try to keep informed. And one is, these are a list of our development projects. So we try to keep those up to date as much as possible. There's also what's called this public notice portal. And by clicking here, you can sign up to receive all notifications on that particular project. So it's a very automated way to stay informed and engaged in the development process. And then in addition, this map, I'm going to stop sharing, just make sure you guys are able to see this. So this map lists all of our projects and the locations. So it gives you a sense of what's happening in your neighborhood, big and small. And again, is a great place to, if you want to look at Glenwood Station, for example, it gives you a little synopsis of what's going on there. And then you can click for more information and get as much information as you need to stay informed on the approval process and what's happened to date with that particular property. So it's a pretty good tool that we want to promote, and please share that information with your friends as well, so we can keep people informed. We'll go back to the presentation now. All right, so the next slide is capital projects. We have continued to stay very busy with some significant public improvements in the community as well, as we've talked about over the years. We'll cover a few updates here. Everyone realizes, I hope, that the Civic Center parking garage is now opened in opened in May, after about 11-month construction cycle. It's got close to 300 parking spaces, and we're trying to utilize it for commuters, customers, business employees, residents, as well as Civic Center employees. We've got a public, I'll show the public plaza and public art was a component of this as well. So we really tried to create kind of a campus feel around the Civic Center instead of what was there previously, which was really kind of deteriorized property. And we purchased a property to provide some connectivity to Main Street. So we're happy how that turned out.
So just
Go ahead.
a point on this is, if you go back to the last slide,
Sure.
I was a big supporter of this, but you need to understand that this project was a partnership between the village and the College of DuPage. And I think it just illustrates the opportunities that we have to work with the college to do more in the village to really integrate the interests of those two kind of stakeholders together. So, really, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge Diana Martinez for her effort in this. And to also let you know that there is another project that is contemplated as part of this 2-year relationship, and that involves the Taylor Street pedestrian underpass. So we're considering some art murals for the inside of the underpass to make that a little bit more of a destination that people will want to come by and see that. And then once that partnership ends, we intend to continue that arts initiative in Glen Ellen through the Glen Ellen Fund. And we have some interest from donors who are interested in doing that. If there's anyone out there who would like to participate in that, certainly we would love to have you join. But arts and culture in the village is a priority for certainly my administration, and I'm hopeful that that will continue on long after I depart. Oh, one last thing. If we go back to the garage, as I understand it, we won an award for this.
Yes, we have. We won a design award just last week based on the architecture and how it fits in with the Civic Center and the neighborhood. So we're really proud of that. And the design team, and particularly on our team, our engineer, village engineer, Rich Daubert, deserves a lot of credit for that.
So I think that this is really proof of concept for me, meaning that we can have new development in the village and it can work and integrate nicely into the architectural style that the village has had for many years. There's no reason why we can't have both of those components as part of any future development in the village.
Thank you. So let's move on to our next project. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to start this over real quick. So we are getting ready for our next major capital investment in the downtown, and that is the CBD streetscape and utility improvements. This is our first major investment in the downtown, in infrastructure in the downtown since the 80s. So we have been looking at this and designing this for a number of years. We've got some 100-year-old sanitary sewers and water lines. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do it the right way, and that is to improve all the infrastructure. So we're embarking on a close to a $28 million project. Only about 20% of that is the streetscape. So a lot of this work is going to be underground and infrastructure improvements that kind of sight unseen, but are really important to obviously the businesses and all of us that use the downtown. We're hoping to begin construction here later this year. It's a 4-phase project. So we're going to be doing south of the track, so Main Street and Duane Street, and a little bit of Hillside in 2022. We're planning to do the area around Glenwood Station and Prospect in Glenwood in 2023. I'm sorry, I reversed that. Pennsylvania and Main Street on the north side in 2023. Crescent and Prospect and Glenwood around Glenwood Station project in 2024 in conjunction with their project wrapping up. And then Crescent and Forest along the train station in 2025, hopefully in conjunction with the train station. And we'll cover that in a second.
So one of the things that you should know about this project, as well as the parking garage and the train station, is that we have financed this through the issuance of bonds. The debt service on that bonds is paid by the revenue that we get through the food and beverage tax. And if the trajectory that we're on right now remains, we will be able to accomplish all 3 of those projects without raising property taxes to pay for this type of downtown improvement. And I think that serves us all well.
Good point. It's just a couple illustrations of what we're improving. So this is Hillside, Main Street here, and this is Duane on this side. So We're going to have a mid-block crossing here to help facilitate walkability in the downtown, a new streetscape, new trees, more flowers. I think that's one of the questions we already received tonight is, can we plant some more flowers? Absolutely. This project is incorporating more flower beds and certainly more trees. We'll cover that in a second. And it's just an opportunity to widen sidewalks where possible without losing too much street parking, to allow more outdoor dining, as well as just, like I said, improve the walkability. Decorative street crosswalks and bump outs to make it easier to get across the street throughout. So it's just a number of improvements all coming together through one project.
This is just a really interesting illustration of what we've learned from the pandemic. So through this whole experience, which has been a bad one thing that we did learn is that people would like more outdoor dining. And so as this project kind of evolved, we understood that and we redesigned it a little bit to create some wider sidewalks to give the businesses the opportunity to have more outdoor dining, more sidewalk space, while at the same time being mindful of the fact that we have to provide parking for the downtown businesses also. So I think we struck a nice balance between those two features. And I'm sure many of you have gone to Wheaton and witnessed that experience. What we've tried to do is learn from that and talk to them about ways that we can minimize the inconvenience to the downtown businesses so that they can continue to stay open. We understand it's been tough on them through the pandemic, and we're not really interested in making it more difficult on them by shutting down the streets now. And so we're trying to do our best to provide access to the downtown. And part of that is the phased process where the construction will be done over a number of years rather than trying to do it all at once.
Good summary. So this is just a little illustration on the new raised flower beds and new trees. These trees will also have some silvicell, it's called, which is an improvement over the soil. And in some of these sidewalks, trees don't grow particularly well because it's an urban area. But we are going to be planting 120 new trees, doubling the number of trees downtown. So we're excited about adding, adding to our urban forest and improving the overall look of the downtown.
Yeah, and Manager France makes an excellent point, which is you may not see it in the drawings, but below grade, the installation that we've selected should make the growth of the trees much better. And our hope is that in the years to come, we'll have a much larger and broader downtown canopy by virtue of the fact that we've selected an underground water and system for the trees. So what you see above grade is going to be nice, but what's below grade is equally important too to the treescape.
So it's another illustration of that. I guess that's the last one. So again, we're excited about this. We're going to have a pretty robust communication plan so we can keep businesses informed and engaged in this throughout the phases. We understand there's going to be some inconveniences with this, of course, but at the end of the day, it's a needed improvement and it's one for our generation. It hopefully will last 30 or 40 years and really serve the community well. So we're excited to get that started this spring.
Look, we see this as much a part of the walkability of the downtown and the charm and the character of the downtown, as well as an economic development feature, meaning that in order to attract businesses to our downtown, businesses expect modern utilities and walkability and parking. And this is intended to create an environment where businesses will want to come to Glen Ellen, located in Glen Ellen, and will continue to expand the economic base through the sales taxes so that we can continue to keep the property taxes in check.
The last capital project we want to touch on, and we've talked about this many times, it's a long-term project that continues to progress. It's the downtown train station project with the underpass that will probably be the most important component of walkability in our downtown is trying to get a safe way for not only commuters, but pedestrians to get north and south along the rail line here. So this is doesn't have an exact timeline yet. We're working through a very complicated process with the UP, with Metra and the state, but we are really excited about over 20 million in federal dollars being earmarked for this project. And we're completing phase 1 engineering hopefully this year and move into phase 2 next year and try to get this to align with the 3rd phase or 4th phase of our downtown streetscape project.
So just so you appreciate, our train station is for sale. Union Pacific is offering our train station and a number of train stations along the different lines for sale. And they've asked us if we would like to purchase the train station. And their asking price is $3 million. I don't think our train station's worth $3 million, to tell you the truth. But, you know, that's my opinion and maybe shared by some of the board members. In any event, this is a project that we are very excited about, but Union Pacific has complicated a little bit by trying to sell our train station. Metra is involved in those discussions. And at this stage in the game, I'm not sure we have a good feel for exactly what the outcome will be, but we'll continue to negotiate in good faith with them. And, you know, if the situation presented itself and the price was right, I think the board would consider buying the train station, but that price for us is just too high.
Good summary. So just in summary of all the kind of investments planned for downtown, we are looking at about 160 million in public and private capital dollars going into the downtown with the Avera on Duane, the Civic Center parking garage, Apex 400, the streetscape project, Glenwood Station, and then the train station down the road. And again, some of that is federal dollars, which is great. But as President Senek indicated, all of this is being funded without an increase in property taxes and has been vetted and planned for over the next few years. And it certainly will be a big investment and improvement for the downtown.
So for those of you who wonder, what does our village staff do? This is the answer to it, both at the management level, at the finance level, and also out at Public Works at the engineering level. Rich Daubert and his crew do a spectacular job of managing these projects. And as you can see, these are rather large projects, but they do a really good job of utilizing the resources in-house that we have and then outsourcing as appropriate to get the type of quality that we think Glen Ellen deserves.
All right, so let me turn it back over to President Senek and he can cover, which he's touched on some already, the upcoming initiative and events planned for this year.
Okay, well, you know, one of them is our comprehensive plan. And the last time this was done was about 20 years ago. And this is really the document that is used for purposes of, you know, visioning what the village will be in the next 10, 15, or 20 years. So we have had a great deal of work put into this, both at the staff level and at the consultant level. And the board has been commenting on this. And we encourage you also to put in, you know, send us your comments. This document is available on the village website. We would love to have you read it and tell us what you think about it. You know, this is your village. What I may think about what it should look like, you know, I'm just one person. So I'm more interested in what everybody thinks about this. And so I encourage you to take a read through it and to comment on it and come visit. We'll have some more workshops on this to talk about what the plan should say. But this is the document that will dictate really the future of the village. So we're going to spend the time we need to get this done right. Some of the other initiatives that we have, and this one is very, very important to me. The Mental Health Partnership and Assessment in conjunction with the Milton Township 708 Board. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a referendum in Milton Township to establish, you know, a 708 board, which is a mental health board generally. And we are working very closely with them to make sure that we integrate the services that are available through Glen Ellen and through the mental health board. One of the downsides that our community is experiencing is an increase in teen suicide. And I intend to act as aggressively as we can to stop that phenomenon to the best of our abilities. And one of the ways to do that is to devote the necessary resources to ensure that the treatment and the facilities are available to people who are in need. One of the things that I've been advocating to the 708 board is, look, you can just block grant the money that you have to the organizations that we have in the village who are already devoted to addressing this problem. The 708 board, I believe it was $800,000.
Yes.
$800,000 was the levy that the Milton Township Board passed to provide mental health services. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of the not-for-profit groups in the village who do that, youth and family counseling being one of them. And from my standpoint, we have the talent, we have the desire in the village to address this problem. All that Milton Township would need to do is just to give us the resources to do that. And I've been lobbying hard with my friends on the Township Board that they don't need to build a new hospital. They don't need to do anything. We have what they need now. What we don't have is the money to expand those services so that we can reach all the people, all the kids in all the high schools. So it's a very important initiative from my standpoint. We talked a little bit about the Community Relations Commission. I couldn't be happier that we've put this commission together. I think it's going to pay dividends for us for years to come. I look forward to hearing some of their suggestions and seeing what we can do to broaden the inclusiveness in the village. Community grants to support nonprofits. This is really, we used to do this years ago. We stopped doing it. We're going to start doing it again. The village is going to provide grant money to the various not-for-profits in the village to allow them to do their job. One of the things from my standpoint, as I've said, I think we've got some great not-for-profits in the village who do some great work for the members of our community who need it. Food Pantry, Bridge Communities. What they need is funding. And so from our standpoint, we want to try to help them, want to get them the resources they need, and we want to get out of their way and let them do their job. McKee House Preservation Group, you may be familiar with the McKee House. It sits out there on Geneva? St. Charles. St. Charles. I always get those. 27 years, you know. The McKee House is the former home of the first superintendent of the DuPage County Forest Preserve, McKee. It is a great old house that was built during the WPA, during the Depression, post-Depression era. And we're thinking about rehabbing that building. There's a private group that is taking on that task. Right now, it looks like the most likely use would be a Native American Cultural Center for the Potawatomi Indian group and other Native American tribes. The reason why that's a little bit of a unique use out there, or that's an appropriate use out there, is that land used to be inhabited by the Potawatomi Indians before we all got here. And we've been working with the Soaring Foundation to raise funds to rehab the facility, turn it into a Native American Cultural Center. And I think it'll be a great addition out to with the History Center, hopefully the Native American Center. It's kind of a nice history corridor out there. We talked a little bit about the Public Arts Initiative with COD. Again, the Taylor Street Underpass is next on the list. We'll see how that goes. But we expect to continue that on after the partnership with COD terminates at the end of next year. And then we'll continue to develop the Glen Ellen Fund through the DuPage Foundation. And the Glen Ellen Fund is a really sort of unique concept to allow philanthropic-minded residents to contribute to the development of the village through private donation. It gives people an opportunity to, do things in the village that you can't really do through the local government, but they can partner with the local government to provide any type of aesthetic, architectural beautification features, particularly now with streetscape coming. We're hoping that that will be a source for some additional funding for streetscape. And finally, the attainable affordable housing development. As Manager Franz mentioned, out on Roosevelt Road, we've acquired the hotel properties, and certainly one of the uses that we will consider is an affordable housing development. We've had some discussions with groups who are interested in that. For anyone who wonders what this would look like, I encourage you to Google 1212 Larkin. It is a development up in Elgin that was done by Full Circle Community or Full Circle Development. And they are a group that we've been talking to. Again, if you wonder what it's going to look like, I don't know that it'll look exactly like that, but that is the quality of the construction that you're likely to see down here. And we'll talk more about that.
And let me just make one other quick point here. This, in addition to the hotel property, we're also looking to hire a consultant and potentially put together a task force of knowledgeable residents to assist us in doing a village-wide review of our attainable affordable housing needs so that we could advise the board and identify some goals for the future village-wide in terms of attainable housing.
Yeah, I just want to add to this. That particular space, in addition to affordable housing, we are going to consider other options, and we will see what the community would like to do. This is not something that, from my standpoint, is my decision. I actually don't even vote anymore that I'm the president. But affordable housing is one of the options that is certainly going to be on the table, and we're going to explore that option thoroughly. But we are going to consider other options too. And at the end, we're going to listen to what the residents want to do. And then the board will make a decision on how best to proceed.
Just wrapping up here, I wanted to share with everyone, as the pandemic improves, which we hope happens here over the next few months, we are preparing to kind of return to a lot of the community events that you know and love. So this is just a snapshot of some that the Chamber of Commerce and the Glen Ellen Alliance, who both do a great job in promoting businesses and supporting businesses and providing great events for the community to enjoy, are planning for this year. And then lastly, just a way, I want to always kind of finish these presentations with ways to stay connected. We can't meet your needs if we don't hear from you and we don't have an engaged community. And we're fortunate that we have all of you and the community at whole that are very interested in what's going on. So here's just a little reminder of how to stay involved and keep informed with our weekly newsletter, our social media channels, our website. This is the Notify Me feature that we talked a little bit about. We have a relatively new service request system called SeeClickFix. There's a link here. We can share this presentation with all of you, and so you have these links. But in essence, if you see a light out or a sidewalk trip hazard, you can go to the SeeClickFix, take a picture of it, send it to us. You get an automatic response. You'll be notified once it's improved, and it's a way for all of us to help keep our community looking good and working well. And then we've got an emergency alerting system. If you haven't signed up for that yet, we advise you to do that. As people give up their landlines, we're having a harder time making sure that we can connect to all of you in an emergency. This is a way to do that. And as well, we have a radio station on a low frequency, but it can be heard anywhere in town, AM 1620, and we use that for emergency situations. We had a few radio messages that we sent out during the heart of the pandemic. So we try many different ways to stay connected to our residents, and we appreciate everyone doing their part.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize the emergency alerting system. Really, please sign up for that. I think we saw what happened down in Woodridge and Naperville. And, there is a process that we have to, alert you to, natural disaster or the risk of that. But you have to sign up for that. Please do that. That's a great system, and it's one that you should take advantage. And really, in terms of communication, just want to thank the League of Women Voters again for the opportunity to appear here and give you some insights into what's going on in the village, and now give you an opportunity to tell us your thoughts.
Very good. Thank you to both of you for that wonderful information, not only about what has happened in the past year, but what's happening not just next year, but in the 5-10 years to come. And thank you for the offers of participation by the community to help you out in those areas you asked for. I have seen lots of questions coming in. So at this time, we're going to hand it over to Karin Daly, our VP of Communication, who's going to go through the questions and kind of consolidate them and lead us through the Q&A.
Great. Hi, everybody. That was a terrific and very comprehensive presentation. And you answered, I think, some of the questions already, or parts of them. We have a very active and involved league membership, as well as community members. And there are a couple of broad themes, I would say, in the questions. And the first one is about the statistic you started with, which was the amount of poverty we have in our village, which is almost 6% of those in our village limits living in poverty. And of course, that's connected to the attainable housing. And we have a number of questions on that. But the first question is about how the village might better assist those nearly 6% of residents, Glen Ellen residents, who are living in poverty. right now?
So we have first of all, we have the community grant program we've reinstituted to try to put the hands in sort of a partnership, I would say, between, municipal government and private industry and the not-for-profits to provide services to those members of our community who are the most in need. And we're going to continue to fund that and, consider whether the level of funding we have is meeting the needs of those residents of our community who do live below the poverty line. The other thing to keep in mind is, particularly within the confines of the pandemic, we've taken a number of steps to address the issue of families who may be struggling, particularly with, for instance, our water service. If you're having problems paying your water bills, we have a program that will allow you to abate that and then spread that out a little bit. And I think there are some other ones you may know more than I.
Yeah, I just think we want to support the food pantry, for example, was the village approved a permit to get that project up and running, and we want to try to support them wherever we can. And I think it's basically a bigger picture. It's just looking for those partnerships, working with our religious leaders, finding where we might have gaps, where we can assist. So it's going to be a community-wide effort. There's not one solution, but we certainly want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and we also are very sensitive to the issue of our senior members of our community and the things that we can do so that they can continue to live in the community where they raise their family, where they grew up, where their grandparents and great-grandparents may have lived. And so we're continuing to discuss ways to diminish the financial burden on our senior members by scaling the fees and different charges that the village imposes so that they're not as burdensome on the senior members of the community. And by the way, I'm a big advocate of that because some tell me I'm a senior member of the community. So,
Yeah, that's a good point, President Senek. We also do a low-cost transportation program through our seniors services programs, and we do assist with Medicare and Medicaid applications and whatnot to try to make sure that the healthcare is available for those that may be in need.
and one last point is we certainly are going to continue to work closely with Milton Township and the county so that we continue to provide services to either the low-income members of our community or the senior members of our community, but to ensure that those aren't duplicating the services that are provided by the other levels of government, and that we actually work more complementary so that we can provide broader services at a more efficient cost.
Well, we have quite a few questions about attainable housing and about this residents who are living in poverty. And you'd also mentioned that you're having a new task force that's going to be looking at broadly at the issue, focusing on attainable housing and potentially, I guess, also services and other things that would be connected to that topic. Is that correct?
Yes, and attainable housing is many categories. So it's young adults with disabilities, it's seniors, it's low income. So that's what we want. We want a comprehensive review of that so that we know where there's some gaps, know where maybe we're stronger in some areas, and try to address those gaps. I should have mentioned with the Glenwood Station project at McChesney, the village board did approve 2 affordable housing units for that as part of that project, and about 60% of that, those apartment rents are at the workforce housing level. So that particular development is more catered towards that group. The Apex project is more middle ground, and the Avere project is more higher end. So we are seeing a nice mix of rents in these projects to try to meet the diverse needs of our community.
One more kind of question on attainable housing before we move on to some other topics. There are several questions about location of attainable housing and that puts some of it or most of it out on Roosevelt Road in terms of quality of life of residents. What about the balance there in terms of why are so many of the luxury units in the downtown area and affordable and attainable housing to be pushed up to Roosevelt Road?
So understand that the way we went about this was we didn't pick Roosevelt Road. What we did was we found the developer, again, they did the 1212 Larkin property up in Elgin. And we offered them 3 sites within the village, 2 of which were downtown. One would have been west of the library, one would have been the US Bank site, and one was the hotel site on Roosevelt Road. And they selected the Roosevelt Road site as fitting the criteria that they look for to optimize affordable housing development. And primarily, it's really pretty simple when you think about it. They would like a developer, a location that is close to transportation. They would like it close to grocery stores, drug stores. They would like it close to schools. They would like it close to a medical kind of, urgent care, out care patient facility. And they, when they evaluated those 3 sites, they concluded that Roosevelt Road site was the optimal site based on those criteria. So this isn't really our desire to put it in a particular location. What we're trying to do is find the location where we think it can be the most successful. And not being affordable housing experts, we went to a group that we think knows how to do this based on their success with other developments. We listened to what they said was the criteria for a site that would fit their needs. And they thought Roosevelt Road was the optimal location.
I think that's the other reason why we want to bring in a consultant to kind of help us understand understand the facts, because I've heard that question before, but we have a lot of affordable housing units downtown already. On Pennsylvania and west of the library. So what we really want to understand is where is this housing? 18% or 17% of our housing is affordable in Glen Ellen, which it's just a number. We want to understand what that means. Now, I think we probably have a need for new and improved affordable housing, which is what the board is trying to look at and address. But we want a consultant to help us and a task force to assist us in understanding, again, where those gaps are.
We had a couple of questions on a related issue, and that's that at least the downtown area of Glen Ellen has become a bit of a food desert. I live there, and there's no place to shop unless you want to spend a lot of money at Marché on a small piece of cheese. It's delicious cheese, but
Good cheese. No, that's right. That's
it's
the point.
delicious. Absolutely. What are the plans, if any, for a grocery store for people in downtown Glen Ellen?
As I understand it, some years ago, and might have preceded my tenure on the board, that issue was looked at and there were no takers. And I think primarily the reason that was true is because we didn't have the density in the downtown that a lot of grocery store chains were looking for to locate there. Interestingly, we have now brought that study back up and we've updated it. And one of the more appealing parts of it is that we can now show groups who are interested in locating a grocery store in the downtown that we do have more density in the downtown now. We have 2, 3, maybe 4 developments soon that will provide the density that would encourage them to bring a small grocery store chain to the downtown. The challenge for us right now is finding a location for it. And that challenge comes down to one thing, and it's parking. You have to have enough parking so that the groups feel that their customers will have access to the store. And so we're having that discussion both at the development side with some of the developers who are looking to locate or to develop in the downtown. We're also having that discussion with some of the potential grocery store chains who are looking, would their store fit in the downtown? And understand, we're not going to put another Pete's downtown or another Jewel. We're looking for something that's scalable to the downtown that will provide the type of resources, the type of groceries that our residents want, but isn't going to dominate the downtown, that will fit nicely into the downtown structure.
Well, I was very jealous to see that downtown Lombard is now going to have a Prairie Food Co-op, and that would be sort of a perfect size for downtown Glen Ellen, just in my opinion.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay. Good to hear. Good to hear. So we have a number of questions too about sort of environmental and green. One of the groups I'm also involved in is Go Green Glen Ellen. We also have an environmental group within the Legal and Voters. And there are a number of members that I see have already popped up here asking about green questions. So I know one of them, for example, is some of the events that you mentioned just on one of your last slides. Someone was a beer seller as part of one of the local nonprofits, and there was absolutely no recycling that went on at any of the events downtown. Is that bound to change?
Let me do that.
Yeah, you go into no.
Yeah, it is something we try to address. Some events are better than others, and that's probably an area we do need to improve upon. We try to make account for it, but not everyone follows through as well as they should, and we need to probably do a little more enforcement. So that's certainly an area we can improve.
Yeah, and with respect to development, we always are trying to encourage the developers to go green and to the degree possible pursue sort of LEED certification. That doesn't necessarily apply to some of the residential development or to, for instance, the parking garage, but we are actively trying to promote that as best we can. And one of the initiatives that I think is very interesting is, oddly enough, our wastewater plant. We are trying to get our wastewater plant to be energy neutral, such that they would generate all the energy that they need to operate. And there are times where they actually get very close to that. And we're continuing discussions with our federal representatives about funding projects that would allow us to accomplish that. One of them is what would be the use of solar energy to accomplish that goal. And so we try to be very sensitive to opportunities where we can promote environmental initiatives. We look to our environmental commission to continue to provide us with feedback about opportunities to do that. And when they do that, we're going to evaluate them. And if they are something that we can accomplish, then we're willing to take those on.
Great. We also had a question relatedly about reducing noise and light pollution in downtown Glen Ellen.
Oh, we are, I can't say that we have reached the sort of certification point, but I believe we are a dark sky compliant community now. And the way we accomplish that is some years ago when we were replacing the downtown streetlights, you may notice that there's a downlight feature and then there's an uplight feature. And we purchased fixtures that allow us to turn off the uplight feature of those streetlights. And we have turned those off with the idea that we would become dark sky compliant. And I've been working with one of our residents in the community who's a very big advocate of this particular initiative. And I'm hopeful that we'll actually get to the point where we can attain that certification.
As far as noise goes, I think that's something that the village board is interested in reviewing, given kind of the economic development growth in the downtown, more outdoor dining, and with that comes noise. That is something we're going to be looking at in terms of how to find the balance there, allow folks to enjoy the downtown and the outdoors, especially during our limited spring, summer, fall timeframe. But that is something that the board will be discussing later this year.
Great. We had one more on green, and that was when you consider approve new developments in town, are there climate sustainable / green energy standards we require them to adhere to with new construction? Going forward, do you intend to increase these if they do exist now?
Well, in terms of building codes, we are going through the process of updating our code, and one of the key components of that is the energy code. Actually, we've already upgraded, we're mandated to do that to some degree, but we will be revisiting that with our Building Board of Appeals here in the next few months. So that'll be one component of it. We also President Senek has started this initiative, is that with major projects, and I should have mentioned this in the development section, the US Bank site is looking to be developed. And we've had some preliminary plans that have come to the Plan Commission and the Village Board. And one of the steps that we've asked is them for the Environmental Commission to review those plans and give the developer some ideas to share. We did that with the parking garage as well. So that's a piece of this, is having our environmental commission help advise and make suggestions. And then the village board would ultimately weigh in as well.
So on this particular issue, it's sort of an interesting balance you have to strike, as I've sort of observed it over the years, which is to the degree that we legislate this and we put this into our village code or into our building code, understand that developers will look at that and they will determine whether that is something that they want to do, because that's a costly endeavor. And so we need to remain competitive in the development level to attract development and not dissuade them because of over-regulation. My preference is to go to them and incentivize them to go green. And we do that through the TIF incentives that we provide through the TIF district in the downtown. So for instance, US Bank, to the degree that we want them to, incorporate any particular environmentally friendly feature, the point of it is, we'll be glad to give you a TIF incentive to do that. And that, I think, encourages them to develop here. And it allows us to sort of economically incentivize them to do that and to use the tax money that's generated through the TIF district to create that incentive. So that's sort of my preference on how we would approach that.
Sure. Because it's a two-way street, because the people who are living in these luxury places also want green amenities, as do people in attainable housing. They want even just basics like being able to recycle. So not only, should it be kind of an incentive for them to want to create them, because there is a demand out there now. We're seeing that more and more.
I think that's absolutely true, by the way. I mean, I think people who are looking to locate in a particular area, an environmentally conscientious area is something that is very desirable. And so from my standpoint, that concept is part of the brand that we want to cultivate here to attract new residents to Glen Ellen, particularly the younger generation. I have 3 of them at my house, or one of them there, but they all come back and forth. In any event, that's one component that they certainly are very sensitive to and they're very passionate about. And we can't ignore that if we expect them to, consider Glen Ellen as a place where they will one day raise their family.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned stormwater being one of the areas of interest for you. And someone did ask about green stormwater solutions. I'm assuming that's something that you're looking into when you're looking at stormwater management.
We do with all projects. We do review that and look for opportunities where that makes sense. It doesn't make sense in all areas. One example, this is some years ago, but we have the new parking or somewhat new parking lot on Duane and Glenwood with pervious pavers. That's worked out very well for us. If there's other opportunities for that kind of thing, we certainly would consider that. I know the Park District has really embraced that. And we've tried to go green wherever we can. We've got electric charging stations in the new garage. We have electric charging stations on Crescent. Obviously, we're going to look for more opportunities to do that kind of green infrastructure. The additional trees in the downtown is a green initiative that will help with stormwater. So that's just a few things off the top of my head, but I can certainly get some more information along those lines and share it with the Environmental Commission.
Great.
And look, with respect to the downtown streetscape project, it's obviously a huge project. It covers a lot of the village, and stormwater management has been a component of that discussion and design so that we can mitigate the consequences of any change in the design of the downtown. And I think over the time, you may not really realize this, but we've done a pretty interesting job of managing Lake Ellen, such that should stormwater eclipse the lake, we have now developed a path for it to find its way to the DuPage River without encroaching on any of the properties surrounding it. So that is an issue that we continue to be very sensitive to. And I, in particular, anyone who knows where I live will understand that the historic water flow comes right to my house. So I get that message loud and clear.
Someone asked specifically about lead pipes. Some of the things that you're replacing in town, do we have lead pipes currently, or is there a plan to replace them?
So you can watch last week's Monday night's workshop,
Tuesday
night's workshop, and you'll hear everything you need to know about lead pipes in Glen Ellen. But the one thing that you should take away from this little discussion is our water quality is about as good as it can be.
Great.
That being said, lead from our standpoint is somewhat of a kind of zero tolerance concept. And one of the points that is on the table is whether we would use some of the ARPA money to begin the lead pipe replacement and abatement project in Glen Ellen, and exactly how that would sort of take shape.
And we'll make a bookmark to look at watch that workshop. Now we have a lot of questions, or a number of questions about development and about Roosevelt Road specifically. So if we can move our discussion from sort of the downtown area to Roosevelt and south of Roosevelt Road, can you talk a little bit about some of the developments and some of the things that you're looking at for areas that are not in the downtown and beyond the hotel that you've already mentioned?
Sure. Well, we continue to kind of see the nice improvements happening at Baker Hill with Pete's Fresh Market, calling that home now for the last few years, and the improvement on Roosevelt Road for better access into that shopping center. That's an area that was a real focus for many years, and it's great to see that filled. We've got a number of private developers that have wanted to do some projects but haven't been able to quite to pull the trigger. The outbuildings at Pickwick, where Trader Joe's and Binny's is, that's been discussed for many years, so there could be some development there. The Bank of America site to the west of Fannie Mae, that's a broker has acquired that, and we're working with them to see perhaps a broader development on that site. We're always trying to promote our award program for facade improvements to assist businesses to upgrade and put in fire alarms and those types of things. So we try to stress the opportunities to partner every chance we get.
So one thing to keep in mind is we talk about TIF, tax increment financing, and I think everybody understands there's a TIF district downtown. But what many people may not know is there is a similar TIF district out on Roosevelt Road. And that is, kind of the overarching vehicle by which we hope to encourage development out on the Roosevelt Road corridor. That's a little bit more susceptible to private development. I mean, we don't really exercise as much control in terms of acquiring the property and directing it, although the hotels are the exception to that. But if that model really works well, I think we would continue to pursue that as an option of trying to aggregate the land, determine what would be an appropriate use for it, use the request for proposal process to identify specific developers that, based on the work that they've done in other communities, we think they have the quality and the style that would fit Glen Ellen, and then try to incentivize them to come to Glen Ellen through use of the TIF district and create the type of development that we think should shape the village towards the future.
Great. Well, it sounds like you spend as much time thinking about that part of town as you do as the downtown, and that's terrific. We have some very specific questions about Roosevelt traffic noise, as well as some tricky traffic areas around that Starbucks on Roosevelt Road, where the traffic backs up and creates a bit of a hazard coming off of Park Avenue.
Yeah, that's been a tricky one. We have known about that and have tried to address that with various store managers and the property owner for the Starbucks, and haven't had a whole lot of success there. We've even talked about a relocation concept. So, excuse me. That'll be something we'll continue to try to pursue as we go forward. As far as noise on Roosevelt Road, I am not sure what that issue is. Might need a little more clarification. So,
Okay. Well, who's asked that question? If you wanted to add some more clarification to a question, please do so. We did have a person ask about putting up solar panels on Roosevelt Road.
I think that's probably related to
where.
Yeah, probably to the hotel site. Of course, would follow the same process we do for other projects, and that is to share the plans when they're available and when we have a vision, and go through the RFP process with the Environmental Commission and see if there's ideas like that or others that can assist in suggesting to the developer green initiatives.
Just to add to that, one of the things that we have that we are considering is we have a group that has agreed to donate $25,000 towards a solar project in the village. We are trying to identify what would be a good solar project in the village to use that money for. And if anyone has any ideas on what that might be, please send them in. We would love to hear what your ideas for a solar project were, because we do have this donation that is out there. But there is a finite amount of time within which the funds will be available. So we're looking for that opportunity. And if anybody has any suggestions, we're certainly open to them.
Great. Well, I know there'll be a number of people whose ears just perked up on this call.
I'm glad to hear
who
that.
will, absolutely, absolutely. We had a question about also just about sidewalks on Roosevelt Road being unpassable when there's snow and ice. Is there a solution that would make these sure that these are clean, walkable, and safe? There's also people who take buses along that route, and I have seen people struggle with the snow and ice there myself.
Yeah, we pay close attention to the buses and make sure that those areas are as clear as possible. Sometimes it's harder because it's hard to get out in front of a storm when we're worried about, the streets first and foremost. But that is something that we talk to business owners about. We don't have the mechanisms to enforce something strictly, but by persuasion, we've been somewhat successful in convincing property owners to make that a priority. And if there's specific locations, feel free to let us know and we will try to address that as best we can.
That's great. So we have a question here about another project I know that both Marks are excited about, and that's the DuPage River East Branch Trail Project. Would you like to talk a little bit about a quick update on that?
Sure. Quite an interesting project. It has listed for 10, 15 years. And part of that is in Glen Ellen, part of that is outside of Glen Ellen.
And maybe we
the
should
county-
say, maybe we should say that it's what it is. It's a trail. The plan is to
Oh.
connect.
Yes, so it is a trail that is intended to connect the Great Western Trail to the Prairie Path and then continue on to Morton Arboretum. And by the way, it's a great idea.
Good idea.
And it's not only good just because I think it would be used, but economic development would be promoted by having more foot traffic and connectivity. We could bring those people to Glen Ellen. They could stop and, visit our downtown and hopefully stay a while. But the project has not moved along with the amount of pace that it should. And so what I've tried to do is just deal with what's in Glen Ellen. And what's in Glen Ellen is the connection from the Great Western Trail to the Prairie Path. That goes through Churchill Woods primarily, and then ends up at the Prairie Path. And we have had meetings with DuPage County about just doing that, because the rest of it has got some issues that require more management, more consent. But that little section is uniquely within the control of Glen Ellen and the DuPage County Forest Preserve and the county. We need some of the county money. So oddly enough, that part of that trail is pretty well laid out. And it is very achievable to accomplish that. The challenge is to get under the railroad. And there is, from what I'm told by the county, a location where they can actually get under the railroad and accomplish that connection. I am told that as of the last budget at the county, there has been money devoted to the phase 1 engineering of just that section of the trail. And that this upcoming year, this year in the spring, that engineering is going to start. I'll believe it when it happens, is all I could say. I mean, we've heard that a number of times. But I've been working with primarily Jeff Garris, our Forest Preserve representative. Jeff is all in favor of making this connection. And we're going to continue to press the county and the Forest Preserve to effectively just let us do it. If they would get out of our way, I think we might be able to accomplish that. And if we can get that, the hope is that we will get some momentum going forward, and that will speed the development of the rest of the trail. But the county has put out plans for the redevelopment of Route 53 south of Butterfield Road. And that includes a trail that would connect to this trail. So it is on the radar. The problem is it's just years away. And I'm not really willing to wait that long to begin the part of the trail that's in Glen Ellen. So my hope is here in the next few years, we'll actually at least create the trail in Glen Ellen, and then we'll have to let Lyle and Lombard get on board with some of the other parts.
When it's complete, President Senek has already mentioned that Karen Daly will be the first person to ride on that trail, right? Wasn't that decided?
There are at least 3
Betcha.
people you're going to have to beat to get to that first trip.
I think Ginger
Or
Wheeler
if you count me,
might
by the
arm
way.
wrestle me for that, but it'd be great to have a north-south
It
a way
would.
to be able to take a bike or a walk in Glen Ellen. We had a
Right,
number of
the
questions.
last point on that is the big problem is getting over Roosevelt Road.
That's a challenge.
Yeah. We had several questions here about the volunteer fire department. A couple people asking whether or not we considered going to a completely professional fire department. One talked about maybe that there be a fee attached to our water sewer bills to fund it. What is the situation here with regard to the fire services in Glen Ellen?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, our volunteers in the fire company do an unbelievable job in volunteering their time and effort to provide this important service. And our stations are staffed 24/7. We have a 5-person crew that provides 2 ambulances and a shift supervisor 24/7, all the time. And they also provide some fire support as well. They're all trained firefighter paramedics. So we've got 5 people staffed every day. In addition, we are constantly evaluating how we're providing this service. The donations served the company very well for a long time, but they weren't sustaining. And it's too important of a service to rely on donations. So the village board many years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, created the fee on the water bill. And now we've got it broken down into 3 parts. One is fire, one is EMS, and one is capital. So that has sustained us from a financial standpoint very well. But that's not enough to convert to a career department. The fire company is saving us 3 or 4 or 5, probably closer to $5 million a year every year. So that is, that's the value, the financial value we get from the fire company. So we will continue to evaluate how this service is provided, where we may have some gaps. Just recently, we added that 5th person in a supervisor car 24/7. So, that evaluation will continue.
So I just want to echo Manager Franz's comments is this is a very important issue for the board and one we take very seriously and one that we are devoting money to improve. So from an EMS perspective, we have increased the funding so that we ensure that we have top flight EMS service. From a police standpoint, we have done a police staffing study and we are going to be adding police officers to ensure we address, which is unfortunately a ever rising tide of violence and crime that seems to be encroaching on DuPage County. From the fire department perspective, the issue we have to deal with is going to a full-time fire department is an enormous cost for us. We would have to look at maybe $3 million or above a year to go to a full-time fire department. And given that our current existing approach of a volunteer department is serving the needs of the community, we are continuing to sort of evaluate that transition. I hope that doesn't happen in the next 3.5 years. I'd like that to be addressed by my successor, but I understand that is an issue that we need to be prepared to do, meaning we have benefited from this for quite some time, but we need to be prepared to make that switch, and we need to discuss how we're going to fund that and how we're going to staff that, both in terms of location of the fire stations and just the number of firefighters we would have to bring on staff.
One of our attendees asked specifically that one point in our comprehensive plan, the idea was to have a firehouse at both ends of the village. At the time, it was proposed that the current station at Main Street would move closer to North Avenue, and that would free up the current firehouse for development opportunities, and maybe even a small downtown grocer. Is that off the table?
I wouldn't say it's off the table. It's not necessarily at the forefront. We do have a station north and south of the tracks in good locations. And we do acknowledge that our station downtown, Station 61, is a bit antiquated. We've asked the fire company to complete a space needs analysis, which they're in the process of doing. So we'll have more data points to review and help us make a decision long-term, but nothing is on the short-term horizon.
Look, that's an issue that I think we're going to continue to try to manage in the following way. The current location of the fire department, that facility is becoming obsolete. The dilemma that we face with that location is there are some restrictions on the use of the land that were established by covenants from the prior owners that limit our ability to use that land for the purpose that we would like to. That's not an insurmountable obstacle, but we would have to overcome that before we could use that location for something other than the fire department. The other issue is obviously we have to find another location north of the downtown where we could put it. We actually have some locations that we think would be appropriate for that, but we also have to consider how those would affect the response time of the ambulances and the fire trucks relative to the downtown. But you know, I think oddly enough, those are very manageable obstacles, and you know, I would like to see us really move that up the agenda and have a real serious discussion, because that location is obviously a location that could be used for a number of different things, be it a grocery store, a parking garage, or some other redevelopment.
Absolutely. Switching gears here to something you did touch on in your presentation, and that's mental health. We are excited that the League of Women Voters worked with Milton Township to help push forward the 708 board. So we have a lot of members who are very interested in the mental health of our residents. A question specifically that that came up was identifying the issues and how what we can do as residents to address the needs for the funds for the 708 board. What can we do? You don't have a 708, there's no mental health commission in Glen Ellen, for example. We know the police also maybe have some needs from a mental health perspective, social workers, et cetera. So how can residents be involved, and what's the plan to coordinate that?
Good question, and we should have had a little bit more of covered this in the slides. So we did mention that we are partnering with the Glen Ellen Youth and Family Services and provided a significant more funding, at least in the short term, $190,000 this year. And in part of that agreement with them is we're asking them on our behalf to partner and create kind of a assessment of where we have gaps and where we may want to petition the 708 board to help us fund that long term. And they're also requested to submit a funding request of the 708 board. So we're hoping that we can partner the library, the police department, as well as the village together with the police department to help them do that assessment and discuss with the 708 board a partnership moving forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, so look, we have made a very sincere and dedicated effort to develop a really positive relationship with the township, and for this purpose and for others. And I think we've been very successful with that. We have a great relationship with our township trustees and our township supervisor. And you know, now we will need to draw upon that, as Manager Fran suggests, to try to acquire funding. We are fortunate we have some residents on that 708 board, but what can residents do? They can lobby our township trustees and our township supervisor for increased funding to the 708 board, with the expectation that we would then be able to obtain, either by grant funding or otherwise, a portion of that funding that would be directed to Glen Ellen. And in so doing, you know, it would allow us to shift some of our resources then to other areas that we now devote towards mental health and other issues.
Right. Well, one of the questions did point to thank you for increase in funding for the Glen Ellen Youth and Family Counseling Service, so that they can meet this mental health crisis that we're facing now, and working with the police and local schools, et cetera. They also said that there is a Glen Ellen Mental Health Task Force, which brings together County Health Department, YMCA, Glenbard Parent Series, school district social workers, NAMI, the Glen Ellen Police Chief, and the village manager. I guess they would ask if you'd like to say anything more about this. And it seems like there is, you know, quite a few people who have or need information about this. So maybe it's an area that can be. I know the village is without a communications person right now, but maybe there's this is an area that can be more expounded on, so that people can understand what it is that they can do to help get more funding, or what resources there are out there for them to take advantage of.
Absolutely. That's why we want it. We'd love to see this task force continue to do their work. I think we're going to be breaking down into smaller groups and kind of focus on communication being one of them and a few others. We want to get the word out come July. There's a statewide 988 number for all mental health emergencies, which we're excited about. It's great to see resources being dedicated to this important issue after a fair amount of neglect, frankly, over the last few decades. So we want to be a partner and we'll help wherever we can.
Yeah, look, I mean, mental health issues touch every aspect of the village. You know, our high schools, our police department, all of them, we have to try to coordinate to address this issue. And we have made some good strides in that respect. You know, we have to bring in, you know, certainly governmental resources, but we also have to rely upon the private sector to do this too. And we have to provide them the funds to do it. As I said before, we're not short of people who want to take this on or programs or, you know, organizations that'll do it. We're just short on the funding. And as Manager Franz points out, that's primarily because the state has gradually reduced that funding that has come to municipalities for that purpose. So that problem does not go away. And we'll step to the plate if we have to deal with that problem financially, you know, to provide that funding so that the residents of Glen Ellen, you know, particularly our teens, have the resources that they need should they need them. But for us to really do that well, you know, we have to involve the school districts, we have to involve our police department, we have to involve our township, and we have to coordinate those resources. It's not because we, you know, everybody realizes this needs to be done. We just have to kind of try to all get a coordinated, unified approach to it, and then make sure that we have the funds to do it.
That's right. That's right. So we are at 8:30 right now. You guys have been terrific about spending so much time. We've got a few other questions. Are you okay with just like a handful of questions?
Sure.
Great. Okay.
I get overtime, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows that. Once we get past 8:30, I get double time and a half for that.
Go punch the clock back there. We had a question about the CARES funds received. Share with us how you feel GE businesses and restaurants fared during the past 2 years. How many stayed open and how were they able to sustain themselves also in terms of the, you know, issues with keeping and attracting staff.
Well, we'll cover this in a little more detail with the chamber State of the Village next week. We didn't necessarily include that in this presentation, but I think the village board has showed a lot of leadership in trying to reach out to the businesses, you know, throughout this pandemic. Did we lose a few businesses? Yes. And businesses come and go all the time, but I think we fared really well. And I think it's a few reasons. One is the residents really came out to support, you know, shopping local and supporting these businesses and finding ways to overcome the pandemic to support the businesses. The chamber and the alliance worked really hard to create new ways to market and get these events reprogrammed and reposition ourselves to take advantage of that. So I think our business community came out of this really well. The village board increased the amount of funding to support the award programs. We created COVID awards so we could give businesses money to help them, you know, put up plexiglass or convert their online systems so they can, you know, go remote and withstand those months when the businesses were closed altogether. So, you know, I think we came out of this stronger on the other side.
Yeah, you know, I think you don't need to ask us. All you need to do is walk down Main Street and, you know, everyone can answer that question. The way the metric that I use for this is, oddly enough, how is our food and beverage tax doing? You know, that's a function of the sales down in primarily the restaurants in the downtown central business district. And that revenue has sustained. You know, it's continued to be on a pretty good trajectory and actually has increased as the pandemic has kind of moved into a more mature phase. So by that measure, we're doing very well. But look, we still have vacant storefronts that we need to fill, and we still need to support our existing businesses. And one of the things that I think is really unique for us is that we have Innovation DuPage in the downstairs of this building. And one of the services that they offer is that if there are businesses in Glen Ellen who want to either open in Glen Ellen or would like to, accelerate their development. They have programs available for those businesses that they can attend that will help them grow their business. And so we've had a few businesses that have taken advantage of that. And I think it's just a great resource for the downtown business community that is unique to Glen Ellen. And, it's one of the byproducts of that partnership with COD in putting Innovation DuPage in that space.
That's great. Thank you. We had an interesting question. It is important to ensure, and I'll just read it. It is important to ensure that the north and south ends of Glen Ellen are integrated as one village as new development comes forward. Continuity in architecture, availability of attainable housing units, solar panels, green technology, et cetera, should occur throughout the village. I guess it's more of a statement than a question. Is that your vision? Is that your vision?
One of the priorities of when I became village president was to really reach out to the folks south of Roosevelt Road and let them know that, they are as an important part of this village as anything else. And so one of the first things that I did was ensure that the trustee who succeeded me was from south of Roosevelt Road. And so Bill Payne, many of you maybe know Bill, he lives about as far south in Glen Ellen as you can live and still be part of Glen Ellen. But he is now a member of the board. And first of all, let me just say an excellent member of the board. At least the message there was to let the folks know that they have representation on the board and that their interests are going to be protected or at least expressed. And we actively give some priority to folks who are south of Roosevelt Road who want to be members of the commissions. We're trying to increase, diversity from my standpoint includes geographic diversity. So we are doing our best to reach out to the folks south of Roosevelt Road. And if there are any on the call who would like to be part of the commissions, please send in your application. But we are making a real sincere effort to reach out to south of Roosevelt Road. And one example of that is we are conducting village workshops at the police station now so that they don't have to come to us. We're going to go to them. And hopefully that'll encourage a little bit more dialogue with our residents in that area. And we'll continue to make that effort.
That's great. I was surprised that we only really had the CARES Act question. We hadn't had any COVID questions this time. When we did this last year, and Mark Franz was the only one on the other side of this Zoom call. We had a lot of them. We had one just popped up here now about COVID testing sites and making sure there's valid COVID testing sites in town. Is there something you'd like to say about the options for testing and vaccines here in town?
Yes, we do ensure that they get a business registration with us. That we've got 4 sites in town as far as I know at the moment. So we can certainly state that. We've had no reason to believe that the 4 in Glen Ellen are not legitimate sites, but we are aware that there are sites in Illinois popping up that are not. So if there's any information about that, please let us know and we can contact the proper authorities.
Okay. And there is a question about plans for the homeless.
Yeah, I think the county has really been a good leader on this. Over the pandemic, you may or may not know that the homeless were provided shelter in I think 2 different hotels. The county is now trying to purchase a property, or might have, I think they did purchase the property to convert a hotel into permanent pad site. So that's going to go a long way to address some of this homelessness. But we're certainly willing to do our part and help the county or others, meet that need.
Yeah, look, this is just, it's a tragic topic. And I used to volunteer at the pad shelter. And, it's a condition that pervades almost every community. At the village level, in all honesty, I don't know that we really have sort of a plan for the homeless. We rely to a large degree on what the county does or private organizations like PADS and some of the faith communities. What we hope to do is really just provide them with the funding to expand those services and let them do what I think they do a good job of. But we don't have any homeless shelters that the village operates, and we don't really have any plans to do that. That's really an area that, from our standpoint, is best handled by either the private sector, the county, or some combination thereof. But we certainly would provide the funding for any organizations who are trying to address that.
And I think that the funding of the mental health services is a key component of that. Mental health is a regular component of why folks are homeless, and perhaps these funds or broader the 708 board, their good work over the next few years could maybe address these issues at the same time.
Right. So we'll wrap up with one sort of omnibus question. And that is combining what is your top priority or priorities and what are your greatest challenges? And maybe it's the same thing, I'm not sure. But if each of you would answer that, then that
Sure.
will wrap us
I'll
up for
lead off.
questions. There are some other smaller questions here. And we'll make sure that everyone who's asked them, that we will make sure the Mark will get back to us, and we'll post those on our website. So biggest
here's-
challenge, top priorities.
Biggest challenge, mental health. As I mentioned, it touches every aspect of our village, and our young residents, our older residents. Particularly the issue of teen suicide for me is something that is, we have to take that on. We have to really make a full court press to ensure that we eliminate that if we can, but minimize it to the fullest extent possible. Mental health touches our police department. If you talk to our police chief, he'll tell you that much of the crime in the area, there is a mental health component to that. And providing the police department with the resources to assist them in managing, criminal activity that really is more mental health generated. That's why youth and family counseling, I think the partnership that they've had with the police department is a good one. We'd like to grow that partnership and provide our police with really the social worker resources to address the mental health aspects that lead to crime, and not sort of just view it monolithically. Second, there is no doubt that economic development is always something that we're interested in doing. Continuing to diversify the tax base to ensure that we can keep property taxes low. And by diversifying the tax base, I mean to create more revenue from sales tax, home rule sales tax, food and beverage tax. Always a good thing, so that we don't have to rely so much on property tax for revenue in the village. And then, just generally kind of smart development in the village, making sure that we get the right type of development, that we get the right type of developer, that it, from a housing standpoint, that it addresses the needs of our community to provide diversified housing so that the senior members of our community can continue to live here. And we provide opportunities for some of the, younger people to, rent in Glen Ellen, with the expectation that when they do that, they'll enjoy living here and they'll continue to want to live here and eventually buy a house. So making sure that that happens consistent with sort of the charm and character of the village. The reinstitution of the Architectural Appearance Commission is a manifestation of, I think, the board's desire to see that accomplished. And so that's my three.
And village presidents, three are mine as well, because my job and the staff's job is to carry out those priorities, and those priorities are the village board.
That's why Manager Franz is a really good manager, because he knows how to, partner
That's right.
with me and listen to the residents. So
Well, you guys, I put you through the gauntlet. We answered, approximately 50 questions or so, and I couldn't stump you. So well done. Thank you so much for all of your time. We'll get back to you with a few of the other questions that we didn't get to. But
Sure.
that was tremendous. So thank you very much. And
yeah, and really anyone who has a
Sarah.
question that we haven't answered, you can email it into the village and we'll get back in touch with you and we'll try our best to answer all the questions. Any thoughts and comments, please call us, email us, find a way to get in touch with us.
Well, what a wonderful presentation. I would like to thank everyone on the behalf of the league who joined tonight's State of the Village program. I really want to give you a special thanks to both you, President Senek and Village Manager, Mr. Franz, for an excellent and edifying presentation. And particularly thank you for your very detailed answers to our questions, and to so many. I know I learned a great deal, and I'm sure our audience did as well. The League of Women Voters is very pleased to host programs such as these that can improve communication between the village and the community residents. So thank you so very much. Our next community meeting is on Thursday, February 17th, and we will be learning and discussing the Electoral College history and reform. For any further information, please visit our website. Once again, thanks ever so much, everyone, for joining us, and have a pleasant rest of your evening.
Thank
Good night.
you, and thank the League of Women Voters. We appreciate the opportunity.
Good night, everyone, and thank you.